Hey Sarah, I know you've talked a lot recently about being burnt out.
I mean, I put, you guys can tell, this YouTube channel on pause for a long time because also I have been severely burned out for a very long time. In the next year, I need to figure out what work looks like for me because I do not want to keep doing things the way I've been doing.
So I wanted to offer some strategies that I think might be helpful for you. So real quick, my name is Dr. Corey Wilks. I am a licensed clinical psychologist and an executive coach, and I focus on working with creators like yourself. And I actually did something like this with Ali Abdaal a while ago when he was struggling with stuff of his own. And that actually turned into us working together for a while to help him better align his life and business with his values. So feel free to reach out to him for like a character reference or something, or to see if I have any idea of what the hell I'm talking about. I'll also link to an issue of his newsletter where he kind of dove into some of the main takeaways he got out of working with me. All right, so with that social proof out of the way, let's talk about burnout. Once you hit a certain echelon as a creator, it's really easy to feel pulled in way too many different directions, often between what you actually want to do and what you think you're supposed to do or feel pressured to do. So you get caught up feeling like you have to constantly feed the machine. You're negotiating a bunch of brand deals, and you're just drowning in deadlines and obligations. This makes burnout inevitable. And a lot of that comes down to feeling unaligned in life and business. And this misalignment leads to what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, which basically feels like low-key anxiety, pressure, and this angsty frustration, like something just feels off no matter how much you do or how hard you work. You've also said before that you have ADHD, I think. ADHD can make it super easy to burn out because a lot of times your brain is wired for novelty and the freedom to explore ideas. So as soon as you feel trapped or confined in any way, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, resentful, and burn out. Everybody can burn out, but with ADHD, you might be more susceptible to burning out than a quote-unquote neurotypical person. But ADHD has a ton of benefits if you know how to leverage them, especially around things like divergent problem solving, coming up with awesome ideas, and accessing a depth of obsession that can lead to incredible success. So between the ADHD and the burnout symptoms you've been talking about, here are 9 questions that if you and I work together, I would probably start with. So I'm just going to throw each of them out there, and I invite you to play around with the ones that resonate with you the most. Because it seems like you're already doing a great job of disconnecting from a lot of the things that are stressing you out. Right? You've talked about how you've been taking a break from uploading and doing the same sort of hectic schedule that you have been on for 5 to 7 plus years. So a big thing I talk about in this other video about creator burnout and overcoming it is the ability to disconnect, reflect, and recharge. Well, it seems like you've already disconnected really well. So using this time now to really reflect and recharge is super important. So hopefully these 9 questions help you reflect on sort of what is causing your burnout and how you want to move forward after this. All right, so question number 1. If you were starting over with your creator business, what would be different? So like tech debt is something you're probably super familiar with, where you start off with technology, software, things like that when you're early on. And as you grow, it doesn't really grow with you. So then after you hit a certain point, you're like, shit, I got to go back and fix all this because I've accrued debt that is now holding me back. Well, you more than likely have a ton of other types of debt like that in your current creator business. Things like bullshit obligations, scope creep, and saying yes to too many things instead of defaulting to no. So this exercise can be super helpful because even if you don't actually start it from zero, right? Even if you don't actually scrap everything, just doing the thought exercise of starting with a blank page and drawing out how you would structure your business if you started over from scratch. Because this helps you see things from a different perspective, right? Because like if you draw it from the very beginning, you can quickly see the things that you wouldn't include that you currently do have. Well, now you can target those things to either renegotiate or hopefully remove them from your current business. But you would also see things that you would add if you started from scratch that you currently don't have as part of your workflows or your business overall. So now you know future directions you can take your company and your content. So just taking a step back, starting with a blank page and drawing this out can be a super clarifying thought exercise. All right, question number 2. What advice would your 80-year-old self give you today? So the reason I picked this is 80 years old is around the average life expectancy. Well, most people spend their entire lives letting fear and bullshit get in the way of doing the work that resonates with them. So then they get to the end of life on their deathbed and they just look back with a ton of regret. So think of it this way. Imagine if you could go back 5 to 10 years and give past Sara advice based on what you've learned today. What advice would that be? Well, imagine if you had actually been able to get that advice back then, how different your life could be today. Right? Think of all the bullshit you let get in the way, all the things you chased that actually didn't really matter to you, how much you let external pressures influence your decisions, things like that. Maybe you would have exercised more. Maybe you would have been more intentional with the time you spent with loved ones. Or maybe you just wouldn't have put so much pressure on yourself and constantly chased the things you thought you were supposed to chase. Well, you can't go back in time, but you can shift your perspective and think about how much wiser your 80-year-old self will be, hopefully, and consider what advice she would give you today. Because most of the things we think are important right now just won't matter in a day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years. And typically, anytime we feel overwhelmed, it is because we've lost perspective on what matters and what doesn't to some degree. So thinking about what advice our older, wiser selves would give us can help us cultivate the right perspective we need that empowers us to move forward and show up in the world the way we actually want to. Question number 3, where are you getting in your own way? Right, 99% of the time, anytime we're struggling with something, it's because it's just us in our own way. Our own limiting beliefs, our own unrealistic expectations, our own personal narratives that are holding us back, our own insecurities, and just the pressures we put on ourselves to do a certain thing, to live a certain way, to chase certain things. So thinking about how you might be getting in your own way can be super helpful. So like sub-questions under this to help you kind of think about this from different perspectives. How are you overcomplicating things? Right, as creators and entrepreneurs, it's super fun to theory craft, to come up with these big elaborate plans and how we want things to be, right? Our 5-year plan, our 10-year vision, all these other things. But a lot of times we end up overcomplicating it and then we feel overwhelmed. And then we try to do all the things and then we burn out. So thinking about how am I maybe overcomplicating things right now can be super helpful. But at the same time, another question is, where are you thinking too small? Right? A lot of times our own insecurities or our own just living in this little corner of the internet causes us unknowingly to think too small about the work we want to do, the impact we want to have, and how we are best positioned to show up in the world. So these two questions back to back can be super helpful. How are you overcomplicating things? But at the same time, how are you thinking too small? So another question is, what limiting beliefs are currently holding you back? Specifically, I call these the 4 horsemen of fear, the 4 most common limiting beliefs that hold people back. And these are fear of failure, right, which is one you're probably super familiar with. What if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't work out? But then there's also fear of uncertainty. And this is where we're so afraid of making the wrong decision, we end up making no decision at all. Right? We go down all the YouTube rabbit holes, we over-research, we pre-optimize, all these other things, right? The third one is fear of ridicule. What might other people think and say? What will my audience say? How will my audience potentially react? What will other creators think of me if I make this decision as opposed to this other one? And the fourth one is fear of success, which just may seem kind of weird. Like, well, Corey, why would I be afraid to achieve the thing I claim to want? Honestly, for a lot of people, if they struggle with this fear of success, it comes down to either they're afraid that achieving major success, whatever that means to you, represents crossing a threshold. Maybe you become corrupted by power and influence. Maybe you lose your ambition. Maybe it means you've peaked in life. But then other times, some people just believe fundamentally that they don't deserve success. So thinking about, do I have limiting beliefs? And if so, what are they that are holding me back? Because a lot of times people aren't even aware that they have these specific limiting beliefs. What they're aware of is the self-sabotaging behaviors, right? So procrastination, perfectionism, FOMO, shiny object syndrome, things like this. Well, most of the time, these aren't the issue. These are a symptom of an underlying issue. Typically, something like procrastination or perfectionism serve the function to help you avoid the thing you're afraid of. So fundamentally, I'm afraid that people are going to ridicule me. Or if I'm afraid that if I achieve success, it's going to change me for the worse, well, then I might engage in perfectionism or procrastination. Because the longer I kind of kick the can down the road, the longer I prolong hitting publish or launching my thing, well, then the longer I get to avoid potentially facing that ridicule or changing because of success. Okay. So one of the questions I ask myself all the time, anytime I see myself engaging in any kind of negative or self-sabotaging behavior, I ask myself, how might this be rooted in a fear, in a limiting belief? And then what other like sub question under how are you getting in your own way is, what is the obvious path to doing the thing you want to do that has been so obvious you've been overlooking it, right? A lot of times the obvious solution is so close to us, we can't even see it. But learning to ask ourselves this helps us get out of our own way. Question number 4, are you allowing yourself to evolve or are you fossilizing? One of the most common creator complaints I hear is, I really want to make a video about X, but I'm afraid it won't perform well. So then you don't make that video. Then you feel like you're on a hamster wheel of making the same 5 to 6 overall videos again and again and again, because you know those 5 to 6 things, those ideas, those formats perform well. Then you wonder why you feel like a cog in the very machine you helped create, which leads to burnout. But here's the thing, you're allowed to evolve, right? A big thing I see from a lot of creators is they evolve in their personal lives, right? Like they've developed new interests, new expertise, new passions, whatever, but they don't allow that to translate over in their content or their business. So they are trying to evolve as a person, but they feel like their business has to fossilize. And this also creates that cognitive dissonance we were talking about earlier. You're allowed to evolve. Your content is allowed to evolve. Your business is allowed to evolve. Because your audience is going to evolve regardless, right? Like your audience isn't a specific thing, right? It is a group of individuals. Well, those individuals within your audience, they're going to evolve, but then the actual makeup of your audience will also evolve over time, right? Some people are going to leave, new people are going to join. That's just the inevitability of it. Your audience isn't a homogenous entity. It's a collection of individuals. People follow you for you, not your content. Like more than likely, especially like with the tech review stuff, a lot of people could do those same tech reviews, and a lot of them are, right? But there is a specific reason people watch your tech reviews, or they watch your vlogs, or your behind the scenes, your whatever. And that's because they're coming there for you, not your content. Somebody else could copy verbatim your entire script, all your shots and everything, and it just wouldn't resonate with people the same way because it isn't you doing it. So yes, as you experiment, views might go down in the short term. But one, are you only looking at views as the important metric? Or are you looking at things like resonance or building a deeper relationship with your audience? Because you've heard this whole thing of like, what gets measured gets managed. Okay, but not everything that is measurable matters, and not everything that matters is measurable. So learning to look at how you show up in the work you do can be super important. And part of that is giving yourself permission to evolve. Because you've already said if you wanted to, do a niche sub-channel that is very specific on tech reviews or some other type of topic, you can always do that. But for your overall content and how you show up, you're allowed to evolve. Because the alternative is you fossilize and you burn out and you quit. Question number 5. How comfortable are you leaving money on the table? Because leaving money on the table is its own skill set. Because not every dollar is worth the same amount, especially if that dollar comes with way more stress, way more obligations, feeling you have to jump through all of these hoops, and now you're not living life on your terms anymore. Well, what's the point of being a creator and entrepreneur if you can't have the actual lifestyle that you initially got into this in the first place to have? Learning to leave money on the table in the short term can help set you up to make more money in the long term, or at least just make money on your terms. So like for example, maybe you realize you are too dependent on third-party monetization. Well, then maybe having more of your own stuff to plug allows you to leave money on the table when it comes to some of these brand deals. that maybe they're just too rigid to work together. Or having your own stuff to plug gives you more leverage to negotiate with some of these brands. So maybe that allows you to say, hey, I don't have deadlines. If you work with me, there isn't any, this video will be up by the 17th, or on the 23rd, I have to do X, Y, and Z posts. It may be something like, if you work with me, then I'll do 2 videos a month, whenever within that month you decide to do it. You can also just sponsor your own content. Like one of my friends, he's an entrepreneur, he has a newsletter. He literally just half the time will sponsor his own newsletter with his other company. So then he has complete creative control over the ad copy, the placement, how often he does it, everything. Because working with you as a creator is a privilege that other company pays for. So sometimes leaving money on the table is about self-respect, about saying, hey, if you're going to work with me, here are the rules. Here's what it takes to have access to me and my audience. And a little bit of healthy boundary setting like that and self-respect goes a long way for burnout. Because the alternative is, right, you're basically a doormat, right? I'm not saying you are, right? But a lot of times people become doormats. They just let people walk all over them, and then they let the companies decide all the rules. And then they now just feel like an employee who has to jump through all these bullshit hoops. And then they burn out because of that. Right? Obviously, you got mouths to feed, make the decisions that you feel are best for you and your company, but also just consider that there might be ways that you can learn to get more comfortable leaving money on the table in the short term so that you have more freedom in the long term. That then leads to more money on your terms. Question number 6, what can you not do? Or like, what are you compelled to do? So like me, for example, I can't not write and teach or coach, right? Anytime I talk to anybody, it inevitably turns into some sort of low-key coaching conversation. When I go on vacation, I can't not write. I always am taking notes and coming up with ideas that I want to share with other people and just tinkering with other ideas. I can't not do that. And when you clarify the things that you can't not do, the things you are compelled to, you have to do, that's a signal for what intrinsic motivation looks like for you, for what is intrinsically rewarding. The work you do purely because doing the work energizes you more than not doing the work. And this intrinsic motivation is a great remedy for burnout. Because a lot of times with burnout, it's because we're chasing external shit. We're doing things purely because of the monetary aspect of it, or the fame, the attention, the whatever. Versus saying, well, what can I not do? What do I absolutely have to do on a day-to-day basis for me to consider that a good day? Because this passion comes through in the work that you do and the way you show up in the world, which then resonates with the right people, both your audience, people you collaborate with, loved ones, whoever. If you're only ever doing work that you're only doing for the money, or you're only doing for the social currency, that drains you. And over time, if you're not doing anything that energizes you, that recharges you, you get depleted and you burn out. Now, this doesn't mean you have to monetize all your hobbies, right? But there are ways, especially as creators, that we can leverage the things that we truly deeply love in a way that we can share them with other people that can potentially be financially rewarding in the future. So if you love making videos, if you love helping people set up their studios, if you love whatever, one of the reasons that you may be burning out could be that you haven't been doing those things enough so that they can energize you. Question number 7, whose permission are you waiting for? Right? Most of the time we know which decision is right for us or which decision we want to make, but for whatever reason, we don't trust our own judgment. So we ask other people what to do in the hopes that they'll basically validate our own decision that we've already made, the thing we want to do, but we need to hear it from somebody else. But here's the thing, you don't need somebody else's permission to do the thing, but learning to give yourself permission, to trust yourself, to validate yourself is its own skill set that takes practice. But more than likely, there's something that you've had in the back of your mind, or maybe you've journaled about or something that you really want to do, and is the right path forward for you, or to at least explore as a tangent. But you may still be waiting for somebody else's permission to pursue that thing. And that may be a friend, a family member, your audience, a mentor, anybody. But the reality is, you don't need that. It takes time. It may take practice. It may feel awkward at first, but I promise you 100% can give yourself permission to do the thing. Question number 8, how intellectually isolated are you? But I think you moved to LA from like Houston or something. I think you posted about it on Twitter for that reason, right? I think you were saying how you wanted to move to LA to be around more friends because just where you were at, just, you felt isolated as a creator. That's actually one of the reasons why I moved from Louisville, Kentucky to Austin, was for the same thing. As creators, a lot of times we create for the masses in isolation. It's really hard a lot of times for us because we connect with people online, but a lot of times it's more one directional. It's one to many, but that one feels lonely. So how often on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis are you connecting with other people who get it? And this doesn't even have to be other YouTubers, right? Other creators in different disciplines, writers, entrepreneurs building other cool things, actors, podcasters, things like this. Just exposing yourself to other ways of thinking can go a long way in showing you different ways of showing up in the world. Or like one of my cousins, he moved to LA and he does YouTube, he does writing, he's done some directing, he's done like commercial work. And even something as simple as like when I've talked to him, he'll say how a lot of the film and TV industry, it's more of like it takes a village, right? Like there's usually like these large teams that it takes to succeed on a production. Well, that same thing is super true for a lot of like regular business. But for some reason, a lot of content creators, we think we can just lone wolf shit and it'll work out. And then we wonder why we feel isolated and lonely and burnt out. So just considering how intellectually isolated do you feel and what can you do to feel less isolated, to feel more connected on a regular basis. Like Zoom's cool, being able to hang out with people online is cool, talking on Twitter is cool, but being able to actually like grab a coffee with somebody or take a walk with somebody, and even if you're not like trying to like actively collaborate, just processing things with somebody else who gets it can go a long, long way to helping overcome burnout. All right, question number 9. How aligned are your life and business with your core value? So for me, I try to do like core value. Like you can do top 2 to 3 values, that's fine. But I'm a big proponent of just clarifying your core value. The thing that a life well lived must be built around for you, however you define it. Because for me, every decision, every opportunity has the potential to get you one step closer to or one step further away from a life aligned with your value, with your core value. So for example, my core value is freedom. Not just the freedom from, having a boss or having to wear fucking khakis and a polo and shit like I used to when I worked, when I had a therapy job, but also the freedom to be able to go downstairs and make lunch with my girlfriend, right? The freedom to, on a random, Wednesday afternoon, go grab coffee with a creator friend. The freedom to teach people things and use my background in psychology to help people reach their potential. So shortly after I left the therapy world, I had a good job offer to go back to do therapy. And it was more money than I ever made at my old job. But I asked myself, does accepting this position get me closer or further away from a life aligned with my core value of freedom? And despite the money, it was a no. It would have gotten me further away because it would have meant working 40 to 60 hours for another company, which would have meant I wouldn't be able to write, I wouldn't be able to coach, I wouldn't be able to share my ideas and connect with other people in the same way. So on the surface, it seemed like a really good idea, a really good opportunity, but in the long run, it wouldn't have been for me personally. So getting hyper clear on what your core value is, or again, at least your top 2 to 3 values, can help you clarify things that seem like a good idea in the moment, but actually will take you away from the life you're ultimately trying to build. Because one of the biggest issues I see with a lot of creators is that they're unclear on what their values actually are. They think they know, but they've never actually taken dedicated time to consider it. So then they feel adrift in life and they want more out of it, but they don't even know what that looks like. So they just constantly feel like low-key frustrated and have this existential angst of, I know I'm capable of more, I know my life could look better, but I don't even know what the fuck that looks like. But clarifying your core value or again, at least your top 2 to 3, is huge for helping you focus on what matters and filter out what doesn't. And if you're interested in clarifying your own core value, I've got a ton of exercises I'm happy to follow up with after this. Ultimately, success as a creator largely just comes down to staying in the game long term, which means identifying anything that gets in the way of staying in the game long term is critical. Because if you burn out, you won't stay in the game, and the world won't benefit from the value you have to share with it. So Sara, I hope this was helpful. Hit me up if you want to talk more, because I'd love to help as much as I can. Because I love the work you do. I want to help you keep doing the work that you love on your terms. And if you're not Sara Dietschy and you made it this far, consider subscribing and sharing this video with somebody you think would benefit from it. Until next time, take it easy.